It's a Bluetooth speaker.
It's like Christmas!
I just spent 30 days designing and building this speaker. Well, technically 31 days building two. In this video, I'm going to share my journey designing and building these two speakers and show you what it takes to build your own. Portable Bluetooth speakers have become a bit of a nemesis of mine. Back when I started Print Your Speakers, before I was on YouTube, I actually planned to launch with a couple of Bluetooth speakers. Here are the prototypes. Neither of them were finished and neither of them have ever made any sound. The idea behind this one was to build a boombox with the bass output of a dedicated subwoofer. I chose to base it around the Dayton Epic driver, if that's how it's pronounced. I thought it would be awesome. But the build started getting stupidly expensive, made no commercial sense, so I abandoned it. The idea behind this one was to combine 4 full-range drivers with 2 big passive radiators. The more I thought about it, the more I came to terms with the fact that this baffle design is terrible and I think the speaker was going to be incredibly ugly. These speakers had other problems too. They were tricky to print, awkward to assemble, and it was so hard packaging all the electronics inside them. I ended up putting portable Bluetooth speakers in the 2 hard basket and focused on the Glow 4 and Supersonic. It's been almost a year, and in that time I've taken the 3D printed speaker concept so much further. My new designs don't need slicer generated supports. I have a much better understanding of the acoustic properties of the materials, and I've really figured out how to package the electronics inside the boxes. I'm a completionist at heart, and all this time there's been this nagging feeling that I've left something unfinished. But that ends here. It's time to take on the one project I couldn't finish. This is my draft design. Like many things in today's world, it's inspired by the work of Dieter Rams. And because I have an incredible imagination, I'm going to call this speaker the Dieter in his honor. If I hide the outer case, you can see the basic design. I decided to keep things simple and just use a single 3-inch full range driver. Having more than one driver can cause problems with the sound, like beaming and comb filtering. Also, with such a small speaker, adding a second driver doesn't really improve the sound quality or create a stereo image. The driver I'm using is the SB Acoustics SB10PGC21-4/fiberglass. For those that don't know, SB Acoustics makes high-end drivers. They're designed by ex-Scan speaker engineers in Denmark and then manufactured in Indonesia. This results in some of the best quality and value for money drivers on the market. For a little 3-inch full range driver like this feels super high quality. I also plan to use 2 passive radiators, 1 on each side. The holes for them are empty for now, but I plan to print some custom passive radiators to go there. Inside the speaker, I'm using Wandom electronics, including their 3S battery board and their Jab 3 Plus 60-watt Bluetooth amplifier. On the outside, it's going to have USB-C charging, an aux input, battery indicator, tone controls, and a volume knob. Wandom offers these cable kits with the amplifier and the battery board, but they're missing some luxuries like, a power button, and a charging port. Being the decadent designer that I am, I ordered these bits elsewhere. This does mean that I can use a USB-C charging port, which is super convenient. I'm not really in love with the design language of the bits that come in the kits, and the bits I've bought don't really help the chaos. It's going to look super ugly with all of these poking out of the speaker, so I'm going to have to disguise them a bit. Because there's no consistency in design or mounting method, I thought the best solution would be to create a separate bracket for all the buttons, ports, and LEDs. The bracket can be assembled separately and then glued into the speaker. I can hide the LEDs behind these pinholes and add little extensions to all the buttons to make everything look a little bit more consistent. Anyway, time to make something. You might notice a new printer has appeared in the jungle. Purusha sent me a Core 1, so I guess that makes me like a real influencer now. I'm not a reviewer, but I'm going to print this entire project on it and share my thoughts as we go. Most of this is fitting together pretty well. At first I had no idea how I was going to mount these LEDs. I mean, they're rear mount and have a huge wiring harness coming out the back, so that's not going to work. But then I realized that the LEDs are actually just press fit into the back. The housings don't fit, but that's an easy fix. Alright, everything's fitting pretty nicely now, but one problem is becoming apparent. Because the LEDs can just fall out the back, and because these ports are not airtight, I'm going to have to drown the entire back of this with hot glue. The speaker has to be airtight. Any leaks will hiss as air pumps in and out with the bass. Alright, let's talk passive radiators. In my video about the mid-90s, I mentioned that one passive radiator is not enough. That's partly because the passive radiator needs to move more air than the woofer, but that's not the only reason. This speaker was an experiment to see if I could get 40 Hz bass from a tiny 3-inch bookshelf speaker. There were some problems, with the biggest of which being the shaking. A passive radiator consists of a weight stuck to a diaphragm with a springy surround around the edge. That weight, moving backwards and forth, creates a lot of vibration. On big heavy speakers like the Book Art lineup, this isn't a big problem. But on tiny speakers like this, they tend to dance around on the table. For this reason, having a second passive radiator on the other side of the speaker to cancel out vibrations is essential. Passive radiators like this one are quite expensive for what they are, and I need 2 for this design. To solve this, I plan to 3D print the passive radiators, surrounds and all. I do have some concerns though. For those who haven't heard about orders, an order is basically a mass or a spring. Masses and springs are special because they can store energy. A spring stores energy when it's compressed, and a mass stores energy in motion as momentum. A simple ported speaker is a 4th order speaker. It has 2 springs, the springiness of the air in the box and the springiness of the suspension of the driver. The 2 masses are the air in the port tube and the mass of the moving parts of the driver. The mass of the diaphragm of a passive radiator replaces the mass of the air in the port tube. Some clever people may have spotted the problem here. This is no longer a 4th order enclosure. A passive radiator has a springy surround, which adds another spring, so it's 5th order. How stiff or flexible this springy surround is affects the tuning and therefore the sound of the speaker. Take a look at this graph. In green we have the frequency response for a passive radiator with a really stiff surround, and in red we have one with a really compliant surround. I plan to print the surround out of TPU, but I have no idea how it's going to perform. Luckily, I'm not the first person to try this. There are a few 3D printable passive radiators available online. I really want to just print one and play with it, so I'm going to try this one from ZX82. My first impressions of this aren't great. For starters, this is hard to print. TPU is fussy enough, and to print it 1 layer thick with no holes will take some fiddling. I'm also worried about durability. A single layer print flexing back and forth inside a Bluetooth speaker for years? I mean, it's going to tear sooner or later. Anyway, I'm going to glue this all together with E6000 and see how it goes. Yeah, this is a fail. As I said, the surround has to behave like a spring, and it does for the first few millimeters, but then it just warps and sticks out of shape. It behaves nothing like a proper off-the-shelf passive radiator. I love 3D printing for speakers because it makes good DIY audio accessible to beginners, but this is neither beginner-friendly nor any good, to be honest, so time for a new plan. Alright, here's plan B. I custom ordered this rubber surround. Well, I say this rubber surround, but the minimum order was 200, so I have 200 of them. I'm going to glue this disc to the center of it to form the diaphragm and the counterweight. Then I'm going to glue the entire thing to the enclosure to make the passive radiator. This is the test mule enclosure. It doesn't have any holes or cutouts for buttons or ports. It just has a single hole in the back for speaker wires. Basically what I'm going to use this for is dialing in the DSP settings and tuning the passive radiators. I'm going to have this piece here stand in for the volume of the amplifier board and the batteries. The finish on these enclosure halves is super nice, but they've come out quite badly warped. The Core One's default settings turn the enclosure fans to 11, turbocharging cool air over the print, rapidly cooling it. If you're printing something small with a lot of overhangs, I can understand this. But if you're printing something big and flat like a speaker, this is pretty much the worst thing you can do. The rapid cooling drives a huge heat differential between the heated bed and the parts further up in the print, and this just drives warping. Anyway, it's time to put all this together. I can't wait to hear how it sounds. One thing that's becoming clear is that sticking these speaker surrounds straight into the box is pretty hard. I can't reach the back of them easily, and they sit down this little recess that my big goofy hands don't really fit into. The other issue is that the glue needs a whole day to dry, and there isn't really a way to clamp it while it dries. I think the best solution would be to assemble the passive radiators as single modules with 3D printed frames and then just glue them all in as one part. Alright, the test mule is done. It looks a bit rough, but I think it'll work great for getting the sound right. One thing I'm worried about is how springy the passive radiators are. Honestly, I have no idea how the surround is going to perform, and since I've ordered 200 of them, it kind of has to work. Tuning the passive radiators is pretty simple. Basically, if I add weight, the tuning frequency goes down, and if I take weight off, tuning frequency goes up. To add and take away weight, I'm just going to add and take away blue tack that I've stuck to them. To measure the tuning frequency, I'm just going to use a DATS V3 to get an impedance graph. The dip between the two peaks, the trough in that's the tuning frequency. Based on the simulations I've done, I'm aiming for about 69 Hz. First noise, that's exciting. So according to the graph, we got just below 100 Hz, so the tuning frequency is way too high at the moment. So I'm just going to add about 3 grams to each passive radiator. Alright, now we're at about 81 Hz, so time to add a bit more. It took a bit of time and a lot of blue tack, but we're there. We're at 69 Hz. This peak here is a little bit lower than I would like and doesn't really match my simulation. So I'm a little bit worried that there's a bit too much resistance in the surround for the passive radiators. I haven't set up the DSP yet. Right now it's just plugged straight into a desktop amplifier, but I have to give it a listen. Honestly, I'm so impressed with this little driver. It sounds super clear and I can really feel the bass. I mean, just look at these passive radiators move. I'm starting to feel a huge sense of relief. There's no baffle step correction yet, so the upper mid-range is a bit much, but I'm gonna fix that in the next step. Alright, now it's time to really dial in the sound. I got the amplifier and battery board set up here, and I've 3D printed the grill to sort of simulate how it'll be used in the real world. At this point, a lot of people would just stick a measurement mic in front of it and start tweaking DSP settings until the response looks flat. I'm not going to do that. First, I'm going to take full 360-degree measurements horizontally and vertically, and then I'm going to design my filters in V2X CAD. Here's a really good example of why you shouldn't just fiddle with DSP settings until a line looks flat on a graph. I've loaded all the speaker's measurements into V2X CAD so we can see how it's actually performing, and to test how all the different DSP filters will change the sound. If I aim for a flat response on axis, we can see the predicted sound in room drops off above 10 kHz. That's because the sound is focused like a beam above 10 kHz. So we're losing a lot of the side reflections, which contribute to a lot of the sound we hear. If I set up the speaker like this, it would sound dull and lifeless. Instead, I'm going to leave a bump above 10 kHz, which will make our in-room response much more linear. When I first started designing speakers, I really wasn't sure how my design goals would change for different kinds of speakers. But over time I realized your goals don't really change. Your first priority is smooth in-room response, then it's bass extension, then finally it's linear on-axis response. To achieve this, these are the EQ filters I ended up going with. Now that I have my filters, I need to load them onto the speaker. Most Bluetooth speakers and soundbars have a little chip inside them called a digital signal processor, or DSP. It's basically a tiny computer that shapes the sound to make the speaker sound better. Some of these chips need full-on computer programming, but the one in our Wandom amplifier board works with this awesome software called Sigma Studio. Sigma Studio looks overwhelming at first, but once you know the basics, it's actually pretty simple. Think of it like a big kitchen, with the raw ingredients being our Bluetooth input. The yellow wires are like conveyor belts, and the white boxes are like kitchen stations where things get done. Instead of chopping and cooking, we're doing things like EQ, volume control, and limiting to make the speaker sound better and to protect it. At the end of all this, the processed sound is sent through our outputs and to our speaker driver. Here are the stations I used to apply the filters we designed in V2X CAD. We got a high pass filter to protect the driver, and these ones here smooth out the sound. This one here is special. It's called dynamic bass. Basically, it adds more bass when the volume is low, so the music sounds fuller. But when you turn the volume up, it pulls the bass back a bit to prevent distortion and protect the driver. You can see in this graph that the bass stays reasonably flat at moderate volumes, but if you really turn it up, the bass will start to roll off. Another cool one is super bass. Our speaker doesn't really do much below 60 Hz, so our deep bass is lost. This station creates second and third order harmonics. Basically what this means is that our speaker takes sounds, say 40 Hz, which our speaker can't play, and then just plays them at 80 Hz where it can, and this gives us the sense of that deeper bass. I connected the effect to one of the speaker's knobs, so if you build the speaker yourself, you can test the effect and see if you like it. I think the effect adds a nice bit of bass weight, but too much of it sounds a little bit growly. Personally, I think it sounds best with the knob turned about halfway. I also added basic bass and treble knobs and a limiter, so you can't turn the volume up so loud that the speaker blows up. And these are our outputs. This is where our sound goes to the speaker driver. I've spent a full day testing, measuring and tweaking settings, and I'm pretty happy with it now. The response is lining up with the simulation, and it's sounding really, really good. Next up, I'm going to plug in all the buttons, lights and ports just to make sure everything works. I love it when everything just works. USB charging's working well, my custom power button's working no problem, Bluetooth's connecting really good, and then the charge indicator lights are doing what they're supposed to do. Looking back at my past attempts to build portable Bluetooth speakers, this is where things usually fall apart. Right now, this is just an empty box. All of this has to fit inside it, not rattle, work perfectly, and be easy to put together. And remember, this is not just a one and done for YouTube. I'm going to sell kits for this, so it has to work perfectly every time, even for total beginners. Anyway, time to put the Core 1 to work and print out the final enclosure. The final speaker feels so close. Why are the easy parts of my builds always so hard? I just want to print the enclosure halves. Is that too much to ask? I tried 3 times with the Prusa, but just kept getting layer shifts. I ended up just biting the bullet and deciding to print it on the bamboo, and this is what I got. Another 6 failures. Prusa tech support have gotten back to me. The Core X Y gantry was skewed, which is a pretty easy fix, so hopefully the printer works now. As for the bamboo, I've changed some print settings so that it stops turbocharging air into the side of the print. So we'll see how that goes. I really need to get this video moving, so I'm just going to print one half on each printer and cross my fingers. Bamboo and Prusa working together. Does that make this speaker cursed or blessed? 10th time lucky. The bamboo might be faster, but I have to say the Prusa wins in terms of surface finish, so I'll be using that for the smaller parts. To get the exact mass for the tuned passive radiators, I have to pull them apart and weigh the blue tack along with the diaphragms. It's interesting how the design of an object can really show you who it was made for. Now I just need to change the infill percentage in Prusa Slicer until the estimated filament weight matches what I just measured on my scales. Everything's here, I'm out of excuses, it's time to face my anxiety and build this thing. You have to admit, these battery indicators are pretty cool. In order to make this all airtight, I'm going to have to bathe it all in hot glue, but I'm pretty worried about the aux port because it's completely open at the back, and I'm worried it's just going to fill with glue and block us from plugging things into it. So I've made this little cover, which is going to sort of go over the top before I hot glue everything, so hopefully it doesn't fill with glue. Someone's going to give me a hard time in the comments about how ugly this looks, but look, it's not going to leak and the port still works, so I'm happy. Time for more of my favourite thing, hot glue. We're getting very close to sticking the 2 halves together, but if I stick them together and there's an issue, it's going to be very, very hard to fix it. So I think I'm going to connect everything up and give it a test run. Everything's working as intended, so I think it's time to tidy this bird's nest up and close it up. Alright, so the enclosure halves is together. There's a lot going on in there, but it does all fit. I just tested it and there doesn't appear to be any rattles, but I think I might add some little tabs so you can cable tie the wires to it to make cable management a bit easier. Anyway, with this done, it's time to put the passive radiators together. Okay, it's all together and everything fits. Well, sort of. This is a really complex design with a lot of tight tolerances between parts. The speaker does go together, but the process isn't smooth. I want all the parts to snap together perfectly, so I've had to make a lot of little changes to the CAD model along the way. But the issues don't stop with fitment. I've positioned the passive radiators way too far out, so they're hitting the grills, making a terrible noise. The other issue is that there's a huge air leak around the battery indicator light button. Turns out a heap of hot glue isn't enough to save me from my own stupidity. The battery indicator light is rear mount, so it needs this nut in front to hold it in. It's really hard to grip this nut from the top, so I made a cutout so you could reach it from the side and tighten it up. But this cutout stops the bracket from sealing up against the speaker enclosure, so air's just leaking straight through and out the hole. I've had to remove the cutout to get this to seal against the speaker enclosure, but now there's no way for me to get in there to tighten up the nut. But I have a solution. I designed this tool that you can just press fit the nut into and then easily screw it in like this. So I'm not going to be giving up. I'm not going to abandon this like I did my past portable speakers. It's time to reprint and go for round 2. This is going to be the one. I can feel it. Alright, build number 2 is done and I'm really happy with how it looks. But I haven't tested it yet since I sealed it up, so I have no idea if there's any air leaks or anything like that. Anyway, time to pair it with my phone and give it a go. Everything's good so far. No leaks. It's been 2 weeks since I tuned the sound with a test mule, and I forgot how good this thing sounds. But I don't want to just trust my own opinion. Time to get some other people to have a listen. Alright, I told you I've been working on something.
Oh my god, is this what I think it is?
It's a Bluetooth speaker.
Yes. It's like Christmas! Oh my god. Hey! How cool is this?
Alright, do you want to hear it?
That,
Does it sound good?
that's great. Oh my god.
Are you surprised that you can just 3D print this?
Honestly. The possibilities are endless.
Alright. Is it cute?
Yeah, it's cute. I'd have this in my house
Yeah.
happily.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And does it sound good?
sounds great. Better than expected.
If you bought this as like an actual product at like Amazon or from the store or whatever,
Yeah.
would you be satisfied?
Yeah, I would.
It's pretty funny watching people's reactions. I think people just assume that anything 3D printed is just kind of shitty. When you think about where 3D printing started, those janky contraptions that could barely print little trinkets, it makes sense for people to feel this way. But 3D printers today and the things we print on them are so much better now. As soon as people hear the speaker, it's like, whoa, this is real. They suddenly become believers. This has been a hard project. designing the passive radiators, fitting all the electronics in that small box, tuning the enclosure, making it look good, sound good, all while keeping it easy to print and build for beginners is not a small task. But working through all these problems has changed me. I've gone from thinking that compact Bluetooth speakers are too finicky to be worth my time, to feeling pretty confident I can make them work. It's kind of like losing your virginity. I feel like I can build all kinds of Bluetooth speakers now. And about the Prusa Core 1, the first thing I'll say is I have no idea how people review a 3D printer in a week. I've clocked like 200 hours on it and I still feel like I'm getting to know it. Compared to the Bamboo X1C, it's really clear that they're made by different teams with different personalities. The Core 1 isn't just a Bamboo clone. It feels like the Prusa is more focused on getting beautiful print quality, while the Bamboo is more focused on speed. Not that either prints particularly slowly or with a particularly bad finish. Both printers have their weird quirks. For example, the Bamboo loads and unloads filament painfully slowly, and having the spool holder on the back is incredibly annoying. But I'm not a huge fan of Prusa Connect, and having no camera makes troubleshooting print issues like layer shifts really tricky. Speaking of layer shifts, the Prusa has redeemed itself so far. I printed half of this subwoofer for my next video on it, so we'll see how long-term ownership pans out. If you want to see the build guide or get your hands on a kit for this speaker, head over to printyourspeakers.com. The kits are shipping for free worldwide and come with all the special glues and small parts. The kit also comes with a DSP chip pre-programmed with the settings I used. You just need to add filament and rechargeable batteries, as I can't really ship those worldwide. Next video, I'm building the ultimate budget subwoofer. So happy building, and I'll see you in the next one.